We were chatting a little bit yesterday about COVID-19 case levels across the country, particularly here in Ottawa in Eastern Ontario. A little bit of a slight rise, but nothing to be overly panicked about. But we're seeing pushes for more eligibility for the fourth COVID-19 vaccine shot, which is only available right now here in Ontario for those over the age of 60. Joining us to chat about that is Dr. Raywat Deonandan. He's an epidemiologist and science communicator at the University of Ottawa. Good morning, Raywat.
Good morning. How are you?
Love mornings just as much as you do, you know? We were just chatting about this yesterday, kind of talking about, the levels right now. There is no reason to panic, but we should be cautiously, concerned and still protecting ourselves and see what happens in the fall type thing. But we are seeing pushes for eligibility to be dropped here. Just wanted to see your thoughts on hear your thoughts on what the positives would be if we were to open up eligibility. Is it something that pressingly needs to be done right now?
I don't see a downside to opening up eligibility for a fourth dose. That's a fair
point too, yeah.
The data is pretty strong that a fourth dose gives us remarkably additional protection against actual infection, against symptomatic infection, against hospitalization, against severe disease, and against death. And the higher up you go on that hierarchy, the more protection we're getting. And there's no scientific reason to deny it to a younger demographic. It's just that if you do the risk-benefit calculation, how much bang you get for the buck, it diminishes the younger you get. But there's no real risk of getting a fourth dose if you've already had 3 doses. The safety profile stays the same. So I don't know why it's not being offered to everybody.
And on that point, I guess, we don't really know crystal ball wise what's coming in the fall. We've been dealing with a new variant that's taken over here in Ontario. Who knows by the fall what happens? I guess, would it be proactive even on the province to kind of push for the fourth dose to get everybody kind of up to date and then be even more protected, I guess, when the fall does come?
I think so. I know NACI has this recommendation that we should be ready for fall boosters to prevent against a fall rise in transmission. But by the time you're getting boosters in the fall, you're getting protection in early winter, late fall, and it's probably too late then. So it makes sense to get additional protection now. Now, I understand some people are going to argue that we have Omicron-specific boosters coming, so why not hold out until those are available? My pushback against that would be the Omicron-specific boosters are really targeted to previous versions of Omicron. B4 and B5 are later evolutionary developments, and by the fall, there'll be even different evolutionary developments. So it's like we're shooting bullets at a moving target, and we're shooting where the target was, not where it is right now. And also, there's no guarantee that those Omicron-specific boosters will be available to us here locally. In fact, I'm not hearing any particular urgency to order them. Therefore, I conclude that if you have access to a fourth dose now, you should get one.
It's almost of the mind that, don't let better be the enemy of perfect on that front.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. And I think part of what's confusing and complicating this conversation is this unfortunate narrative that the pandemic is over. It is not over. Mm-hmm. For most people, the risk of dying has diminished substantially, and the risk of hospitalization has diminished substantially because of the awesome power of 2 and 3 doses. But if we really want to curtail transmission in the community, keeping the immunocompromised and people who cannot be vaccinated, that being kids under 5, as safe as possible, that means we want to maximize the kind of immunity that prevents actual transmission. Right now, a fourth dose does restore much of that ability, not perfectly, but to a large extent, and for months, not permanently. And I think that's worthwhile achieving.
Well, and we are kind of bearing the fruits of what we're seeing on that right now in terms of, the high vaccination rates, and some of the warmer weather obviously is going to bring about less transmission on that front. So I think people are seeing this right now, but we've talked about some of the lack of preparedness surrounding us during this pandemic. Do you see this perhaps this window here where we are kind of in a bit of a lull where we're succeeding, I would argue right now? Do you think, why not be proactive at this point and be preparing for the next one?
I'm not sure we are succeeding, to be honest. B4 and B5 are substituting over B1 and B2 variants right now. There is an increased number of cases, so we're in the middle of it looks like a wave at the moment. And these new variants are achieving better immune escape than the previous ones. and combined with the laxing of restrictions, I think is allowing for an increase in transmission. So I fully expect a more dire wave to be upon us by the end of the summer, early fall. So yeah, it totally makes sense to be investing now in the tools that will prevent that. Now, let me be clear. I'm not saying we need to shut things down. Not at all. Never again. What we should be doing is focusing on the things we know that work. Vaccination works to a large extent, not perfectly. Ventilation absolutely works, and we don't talk enough about that. And strategic mask wearing works. So we do these things. We don't need to compromise our economy anymore.
But just on that front, yeah, nobody wants that. But just in terms of the numbers we're seeing right now, I've heard it referred to as a wavelet so far, but you see this becoming a wave eventually here.
I'm not sure what a wavelet means. That's an unfortunate term. It's a wave. And waves happen when there are sufficiently susceptible people in the population that are going about their lives normally, as there are now. And we have susceptibility because of immunity having diminished. Now, what kind of immunity? Immunity against transmission. The kind of immunity against severe outcomes is still with us to some extent, but that's not as much as it used to be. Also, so again, the argument for a fourth dose to me is quite strong. We might be looking at booster shots once or twice a year for the next couple of years, unless we change the vaccine formulation until we get the pandemic fully under control. And to me, that's not an untoward thing to ask of people. If that's the price of having an open economy, is 1 or 2 boosters a year.
No lockdowns, if that's what it takes. I think many people are agreeable to that. And I think, from my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, that Moderna is working on kind of an all-in-one flu shot with that right now as well.
Yeah, that's probably our future, is these multivalent vaccines like we have for MMR, measles, mumps, and rubella. That's not an unusual thing. What we really want is something called a pan-coronavirus vaccine. That's a vaccine that can account for all variants now and future. And I understand people are working on that. The Chinese and the Cubans claim to have one, but I've not seen any data. And we also want intranasal vaccines, and these will probably slow transmission a lot because this particular brand of disease nests in your nose. And so if you can have your immunity situated around the nasal area, that should slow transmission. So these second-generation vaccines are coming, not with the same urgency that we had for the first generation. I think that's unfortunate. But we have the technological wherewithal to put an end to this, and I wish we had more focus on that possibility.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fascinating, the technology that does exist on that front. Just on the, I wanted to ask you generally about the BA.5 Omicron variant, because we are seeing 70% of cases now are the BA.5. Just your general understanding of this variant in terms of, is it more transmissible? I guess, how would you compare it to other Omicron variants?
Yeah, I think it is probably more transmissible. It's definitely achieving greater immune escape, which means that if you've had Omicron in the past, you're going to be reinfected with this variant. Is it more severe? I don't think so. There's no obvious data for that. But it does underline the fact that natural infection does not promote any kind of lasting immunity, despite what some people online will be saying. We do not want repeated reinfections. There's some evidence to suggest that reinfections result in bad outcomes down the road, and we don't want that at all.
Yeah, I still want to avoid it at all possible, for sure. We'll leave it there, but Raywat Deonandan, thank you so much for your time this morning. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
It's Raywat Deonandan, epidemiologist, science communicator at the University of Ottawa, breaking